Here's your bolt assembly. What we want to do in this case is inspect it first. Make sure you know how all your parts work and go together. From that point, we're going to go ahead and start removing things. First thing, by having the right tool, it's going to make the job a lot easier. You've got a firing pin right here. We want to go ahead and extract that out. Put it right there. From that point, we actually want to remove the firing pin. There you go. Go ahead and set that aside. And we'll get to cleaning those later and what we want to do. From that point, you've got your pins. Now, this is your actual bolt and your bolt extractor. What we're going to do in this particular area, you've got a small nut here that we're going to put at a 90-degree angle. And by pushing it back, it will reach and pull right out. Now that you've got all three out, the actual bolt will just slide right out. Now, on certain firearms you'll have this spring, on other manufacturers you won't. It really just depends whether you're gas operated or piston. So in this case, I'm going to remove it just so I don't lose it. Now, if we really want to continue to break this down further, as you can see, this particular bolt is quite dirty. So we're going to go ahead and take it completely apart and give it an appropriate cleaning. Right here is your extractor. You'll notice that there's a small pin on all ARs that is right here. You'll want to go ahead and just push that out. You'll see that it starts to slowly feed out the other side. Be careful with this pin because in past experiences I've had it really go firing right across the room. We don't want that. There we go. So now we've worked that out. You can see it's just a small piece of aluminum or steel or whatever your bolt assembly is made out of. Now, an extremely important piece to your firearm is your extractor. On here you'll notice that there is a small little O-ring. In some cases it's a spring. What you want to do with this is make sure that when you're cleaning this area, you use an appropriate solvent and lubricant that will not disrupt it. Because if this doesn't go back together well, the bullet will not extract properly and you'll wind up being in the shop more time than shooting. Now, I want to inspect very, very carefully my bolt to make sure that there's nothing going on, there's no cracks, there's not too much dirt. You can see that there's a little bit of brass and that's completely normal. We'll get to cleaning that. What I like to do now is put some hoppies in a bowl and I want to start soaking some of these parts. Now, in most cases, I would dip this entire thing in, but what I've learned in the past is I want to make sure we clean inside the firing pin's hole. What I like to do is put it face down in the hoppies for just about a minute or two and shake it around after. You'll notice, and I'll show you the bowl of hoppies when we're done, what this does is it actually gets inside the hole where the firing pin is and it allows it to clean out. The reason I put it facing down is we don't want to flush any of those contaminants or any of that brass back into the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit for a few moments and we're going to move on. With these parts, again, you can just go ahead and give them a little wipe down. I've still got some patches left out, and for work this fine, these patches are going to work perfectly. Again, we're being careful and we're minding that O-ring. Just a nice little wipe. We'll do it up. From there, you can also take a brush with just a little bit of hoppies on it and start getting the parts that you feel are really going to have buildup, which is going to be pretty much all of these internals. Okay. Pretty much all you need to do is just keep these to a white clean level. They don't really require a bunch of scrubbing at this point. Now keep in mind, as we do this, we're wiping up the lubricant. That means we're going to make sure we apply some fresh lubricant so when we're firing our gun we don't have any seizing issues or breaking. Okay, so we're wiping clean. I've found in the past that these little pins will actually get buildup, so just a quick dip in the solvent to kind of really break down all that's on there will do you some good. Excellent. And again, a quick wipe off. So we're being time conscious. We're going to go ahead back to our solvent and bolt. And you can already see, and I'll show you, if I can tilt that over, I hope you get that. You can see that there's quite a bit of stuff down there. Those contaminants just flush out all the brass and soot and dirt. What I like to do now with this tool again, a lot of the times I will use a brush, but I really want to just kind of lightly, and I say lightly, and I mean lightly, scrape out any of the stuff that gets wedged in the corner. Dip it quick back into the hoppies. There we go, definitely got some brass coming out. Inspect those holes, make sure that there's nothing in there. Just overall visual inspection is extremely important. I've actually seen bolts where there's cracks in them if they're not properly lubricated. I've seen lots of stuff going on in there. Again, we're just being careful, we're wiping it down. I like to sometimes run a brush in there. Now this one's really not that dirty, so the brush is more for you guys at home to kind of get an idea of some of the areas. Where your extractor goes in, they do make finer brushes for certain areas. You might want to run something down in there. And what I'll do is take a patch, come back to my trusty tool, and just wipe down in there. Excellent. Perfect. So, now that we've properly dipped them in solvent and cleaned them up, you know what, before we do that, we want to just make sure. Taking one of our Q-tips. Yeah, see, we actually still have some dirt coming out. So I'm going to run a couple of Q-tips through here right now. This part right here is actually where the bullet is pulled in through the extractor, placed right there, and then struck by the firing pin. There we go. Alright, so I feel a bit better about that now. This dirt and stuff too, or these little dirty patches, just go ahead and collect them up. At the end, they're very easy to take care of. We'll just throw them right out. What we want to do then is we want to start doing things in reverse. We're going to slide on that spring that we put aside. We're going to follow that up. Get these guys back out in front of you. What I like to tell you is we want to make sure that this particular part, as we've looked here, the extractor, is put back on first. Okay? Now, you'll notice there's a spring-like effect when you put your finger on the back, and that's important. You'll also notice it may not match up completely with the other ones. This can be confusing for certain people, but don't worry, it's not supposed to. We want to make sure we take our pin next, and before we do that, we're going to bring in a little break free. Give it a little shake. The reason we bring the break free in now is we want to make sure that we shoot a little lubricant through that hole. Not only does it make the part go in, but it also will protect it from all the heat and things that are coming from you firing bullets. I'm going to push down. It's going to help that bolt go right through. Or I shouldn't say that bolt, but that little piece of metal. Once that pin is through, we're going to continue moving on. From this part, we're going to want to take your firing pin, still set it aside because it'll start moving. There we go. Looking good. Alright. This part right here is not going to particularly get too dirty unless you're doing a lot of firing in a dirty environment. So if you're out by the beach, or if you're in colder climates rolling around in the dirt, I've seen a lot of different shooting experiences. So we want to make sure, again, we inspect it, but there's really not too much to do. If anything, a quick wipe down will do just fine, and we'll go ahead and do one for the sake of the video. And you can see there's really nothing coming off of here, but we're going to keep it clean. Alright, from that particular part, I'd like you to keep in mind that the extractor needs to go back at the 11 o'clock position, because on a right-facing rifle, as this one is, that bullets are going to extract to the right, that guy needs to be facing 11 o'clock. Slap that back in. Now, if you look too, you want to make sure that it's going to actuate perfectly. And if it actuates correctly, you'll notice that your firing pin and extractor, or I apologize, your extractor and bolt will automatically go right back into place to match up. From that part here, we're going to take our bolt, push that back, and there she goes, back together appropriately. Excellent. Now, we're going to want to go ahead, I like to put just a tiny bit of lube on the firing. Okay. Get the excess off. What I do is I take a Q-tip and I just make sure that it's lightly coated. Just on your firing pin. Excellent. Now, a little trick is to drop it in usually from back up here, but with this particular one, I've learned on this rifle, it's easy to just drop it right through the mag well. Placing your finger on here, you've still got that small pin. I prefer to lubricate the hole just a tad. We're going to go ahead, put your firing pin securely back in place. Excellent. There you go. Your bolt assembly is now back together, appropriately cleaned and lubricated. Let's go ahead and get the gun vise back up here, and we'll go ahead and show you how to reassemble. We now have our gun back in the vise. We're going to go ahead and proceed with reassembly. Before we do that, we want to make sure we inspect our lower. I like to take just a Q-tip, rub it through some of the areas I know contain a lot of dirt and grime on my firearm. And I can tell that there's not too much on there, so we can proceed. Visual inspect. Excellent. We're going to take our charging handle. As this was the first part to be removed, it will be the first part going back in. I'm going to slide it in about 30% of the way until those little rivets I spoke about earlier in the video meet. You'll then notice the charging handle slides to the top, push in about 15%, and take your bolt assembly. Now that you've got your bolt carrier group put together, we're going to go ahead and have that meet in the barrel, just like it came out. Once your charging handle and the bolt meet evenly, go ahead and just slowly slide them together until you hear your charging handle click. From that point, just release the gun vise and have the lower meet the upper again. Be sure to watch out as your bolt carrier group can actually stick out and hold you up. After you've seen they've met and made a nice snug fit, drop the pin forward. At that point, I like to take our firing pin, or our charging handle, actuate it a few times to make sure all the lubricants kind of work together in the inside, and I like to take a test dry fire to make sure we put the firearm back together appropriately. Excellent, there you are. Guys, please stay tuned next week with ETA Media Group as we cover our .380 shootout. Until then, safe shooting.